Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. In today's video we will talk about try except statements in Python. In essence, the try statements let you test a block of code for errors, and the except statements, on the other hand, allow you to handle the error. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's say we have a variable x and we give it the value 6, and then we go on to print the value of the variable. Now, if we go ahead and run this code, there's not going to be any errors. As you see in the console output, 6 has been printed. Let us now artificially create an error that we're going to work with throughout this video. So let's say that we delete the variable x, and now if we say print x, Python won't know what x is, and that is precisely why if we go ahead and run it, you'll now see in the console output that there is a name error because x is not defined. So this is exactly where the try except statements come in quite handy. Let's say that we write try print x, and then we write except, and we'll write print, and there is an error. And you'll see that if I run this code now, Python will in fact go ahead and run the program despite there being an error in the code, which is particularly helpful if you have long blocks of code and are trying to figure out where in your code there may be an error. So this code is in fact executed despite there being an error, as we saw previously when we printed out printx. So this try statement has an error in its code block, and so it goes on to the except and prints out that there is an error in the code. So it has literally tried to execute the code which is in the try block over here, failed, and went on to the except block to print out that there is an error. What is interesting is that you can even go ahead and define more than one exception. So let's say that we have one exception, which is a name error, and then we have another exception down here, which is anything other than a name error. So we'll write print, and we'll write other error down here, and we'll write name error up top. So let's go ahead and run this now and see what happens. And you'll see that in this case we have a name error because the variable x is not defined. So it tries out this code block again, sees that there is a name error, goes on to this first except statement and executes it because this exception is true. And when it goes on, it notices that there are no other errors in this code block over here besides the name error, and since there are no other errors, this code block is not executed. So you can use the multiple exceptions if you want to. You can also use the keyword else in conjunction with try except to define a code block which is executed if no errors occur. So let me go ahead and do that. Let us do something along the lines of print error, and then we'll say else. Print this will be executed if no errors occur. Oh, hold on, I spelled that wrong. There we go. So what happens now is that we have in fact got an error in this try block. So it goes on to the except and prints out that there is an error. And this else code block is not executed because there is, in fact, an error. So let's try and remove the error now by saying that x is equal to, let's say it's equal to 5. It can be whatever you want, really. And we'll go ahead and run it again. And since there is no error that has occurred now, it goes on to skip this except because the try has succeeded. It has tried to print x, it has managed to print it. So there has not been any error to handle, and the except over here is redundant. It went on to the else statement and printed that this will be executed if no errors occur. If we look in the console output, that is exactly what has happened. Similarly, if I go ahead and create the error again by removing the x equals 5, you'll see that it does not execute what is in the else code block, because the else code block is only executed if no errors occur. All right, now let's go on to talk about the keyword finally. This keyword allows us to execute a code block regardless of the outcome of the try except blocks. And this can be implemented quite easily. Let's go ahead and simply write finally down here, and we'll print that this will always be executed. So irrespective of what happens in our try except code blocks, the finally statement is always executed, irrespective of whether there is an error or not. You'll see that if I go ahead and run this, at the moment there is in fact an error. So of course the except statement goes ahead and prints the error because of course the variable x is still not defined. And you'll see that at the bottom of the console it says this will always be executed, which is precisely what the finally code block had to print. So you see the finally code block has printed despite there being an error in our code. Now let's go ahead and remove the error by defining x, and you'll notice two things. I'll go ahead and run it, and you'll see that, of course, the value of 6 has been printed. Of course, you can use any other value for x. And you'll see that the else code block has run because now there are no errors in our try block. And in addition to that, the finally code block, which is down here, has also been executed. So you see that the difference between else and finally in this context is that finally will always be executed and the else code block will only be executed if there are no errors. So this was a small introduction to how errors can be handled in Python. If this helped you out, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot, and we'll see each other in the next video.